Hi everybody, sorry it's been so long. Things got a bit distracting for me, as I'm sure you all understand. But you'll be happy to know that I am back, with plenty of good ideas for some mediocre content. So a couple of months ago, I did a video on my ancestors' culture, and I was thinking, gee, maybe I should do a video on the mythos, since nobody really understands or knows about it. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, Celtic mythology can be complicated and even a bit misleading to some people, as the ancestors didn't write anything down. Many who knew the ancient tales were murdered in an attempt to stifle and annihilate our culture, and of course with Catholicism coming in and rewriting the remaining stories so that the gods are either simple ancient kings or fallen angels, yeah, you can say it's a bit of a bumpy ride. Or is it? Despite both Roman and English attempts to destroy Celtic society, it ultimately couldn't be done, or at least not in Ireland. As they say, you'll never beat the Irish. And it's true. Against all odds, the Irish Celts were able to preserve much of the old ways, including the oral tradition of storytelling. And though people always want to point out that Christianity ruined the mythos when the monks downgraded the gods, but that might be an exaggeration. First of all, it was the Catholic Church, not Christians. Any real historian knows the difference between the two. Second of all, they did that to literally every religion. Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian. Each of their pantheons were rewritten as ancient kings or fallen angels, the Nephilim. But you can still see pretty clearly that they are divine beings. Third of all, if the Celtic gods exist, or did exist, maybe the rewritten versions aren't too far off base. Consider this. It's very possible that Tuatha Dé Danann were just powerful warriors, casters, and kings. In ancient religions, it was common for the peoples to rewrite influential members of their societies into the pantheons as gods. Hell, saints are just people. In Christianity, we're all called to be saints, each generation doing greater works than the last, in fact. But the Catholic Church worships them as divine, with altars and statues and everything. And I'm sorry, I know not all Catholics do this, and those that do claim it's not worship, but by definition that is worship. Not only that, but literally every Roman emperor was declared a god after death, and worshipped in like manner. There's even evidence to imply that one of the earliest Norwegian chieftains was named Odin. How do you like them apples? And if that doesn't satisfy you, then consider the fallen angel theory. Mind you, the Celts are not only part Scythian, but part Hebrew. It makes sense that the biblical lineages in the rewritten mythos would have had a natural influence, as the stories of the Hebrew ancestors would have been intertwined and been naturally passed down the generations, including the flood and the fall of the Nephilim, which is heavily nodded to in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which made me squeal like a schoolgirl the first time. And because of the biblical and historical perspective, they are waving hidden secrets of our past in our faces. My lunatic ramblings aside, allow me to sum up Celtic mythology as best I can. Now, the creation myth is probably the most iffy part. In one reconstructed version by Ian McCanshire, there was nothing but a void, of course. And in it, there was only the god Don and his bride, the goddess Danu. Now, when they embraced, it sparked a powerful and sacred flame from which their children were born. One of the children, Brian, decided he wanted to separate from his parents' embrace and strike out on his own, but he couldn't escape their embrace. Wanting her son to be happy and fulfill his desires, Danu allowed her son to kill the father and escape. Bran then cuts his father into pieces, which sounds very Egyptian, which makes sense considering the Celts likely had Egyptian influences in the forming of their culture as well. This unnecessarily violent method, however, understandably upsets Danu, and she cries so hard it washes the children away with her dismembered husband. Cue flood story. Don's head becomes the sky, his brain the clouds, his face the sun, his mind the moon, bones the stones, his breath the wind. Sound kinda Norse yet? Then Danu's tears became the seas. Don, for some reason, is reborn as a pair of acorns? Danu sees this and cries again, which helps one acorn grow. Don is reborn as a mighty oak tree, and the other, his brother, the druid Finn, I guess? Danu's tears then feed Don's leaves, which grow berries, which fall to the earth and become the first humans. I knew I was fruity for some reason. The people were alright at first, but because they couldn't die, they began to rot on the inside and suffer, which is a very, very terrible existence. Finn sees this and tells his brother people need to die in order for the world to renew itself and the cycle of life to continue. Don doesn't like this, however. They both argue. Don kills Finn as a result, becomes so over grief, his heart literally breaks, he falls apart and dies again. Jeez, dude, you're like me on online games. This ends up renewing the world, and his roots grow deep into the earth, creating the other world, which becomes a place for the dead, and humanity can now die and find peace and rest. Don is reborn again as the god of the underworld, and Danu the mother of heaven, their love forever separated by the earth. Oh, it's so touching. Now, according to the book Myth and Knowing by Scott Leonard, from the sea foam, touching the shore, was born a mare named Ioka. Ioka births the Maylord, more commonly known as Carnunos, who creates animals, monsters, and giants. The combined energies from this creation mixed with male and female energies, which creates a pattern of trinities that reoccur in Celtic mythology almost constantly. To say the least, these two stories are vastly different, but combined, they help explain an otherwise out-of-context story. What seems to be the most consistent source, however, is the Lavar Kovala Erin, or the Book of Invasions of Ireland. Now, the beginning of this book starts off with a lot of Abrahamic origins, as it was transcribed by Catholic monks, starting with how all are descended from Adam all the way to Noah and so on. During this time, the great flood is coming, so a tribe on 3 boats carrying a chiefess named Keser, 49 other women, and only 3 men, Fintan, Macbocha, and Bith. They escape to the farthest reaches of the known world, which at the time would have been Ireland. They make it, but when the flood comes, it kills all except Fintan, who becomes a salmon that lives 5,000 years before human again, just to recount the tale. Sounds kinda fishy to me. You guys are no fun. 300 years later, a chief named Partholon and his tribe arrive and fight off the monstrous Favorians, led by Kechal Grichenkos. I probably butchered that. Anyway, Partholon and his people do really well for themselves, but are all wiped out by a plague. I think a curse set on them by the Favorians, but that isn't stated directly in the book. Then along came Nemed. 44 ships set sail for the Emerald Isle. Only one makes it. Lady Nemed and her people set up various forts to hold off the Favorians, and even beat them in 4 major battles. Then again die off from plague, which I guess is the main curse. Then come the Firbolg, not the Taliesin Jaffe kind, who were slaves from Greece who escaped and came to Ireland for a fresh start. And then the Danan arrived. Now these guys are the gods. The real OGs, the top friggin' tier. The name Tuatha De Danann means children of the goddess Danu, which ties us in quite nicely to the creation myth I mentioned. Now, remember what I said about ancient cultures over-exaggerating their leaders or heroes as gods? Well, the tribe name of Danan also appears in the Iliad, a Greek account by Homer about the sacking of the city of Troy, that was written hundreds of years before the Catholic Church put together this little story. They were a seafaring tribe made up of skilled warriors who fought beside the Greeks. There is also the Israelite tribe of Dan, bringing us back to how the Celts are part Jewish, but claim to be descended from the Danan. Danan. See where this is going? The tribe of Dan were, again, a seafaring tribe who might have been among the sea peoples who brought about the Bronze Age collapse. Charming folks, really. Well, what I'm getting at is that the tribe of the Tuatha De Danann are a weirdly powerful, skilled tribe of warriors with a definitely divine presence about them who sailed their ships to Ireland to conquer it. I don't know about you, but I'm connecting some dots. Anyway, the Danann arrive led by Nuada, their new chief after their old chief Dagda. Nuada orders to burn their ships so they don't think to retreat and abandon the island. Oof. They fight the Firbolg for their land at the Battle of Mac Tuired and win. But Nuada loses his arm and by tradition can no longer lead the tribe. So this bloke named Bress is elected to be chief, but surprise, surprise, he works for the Fomorians and allows the Fomorian king Balor to abuse the Danann as he wishes. 7 years later, however, Dean Kecht, the wizard, and Credne, a blacksmith, forged Nuada a mechanical silver prosthetic hand, and he takes back his crown from Bress. Bress cries like a bitch to Balor, and conflict ensues. So, in a way, he's kinda like an early Luke Skywalker. Kinda. I guess. I mean, mechanical hand, big glowing sword, anyway. Now, Balor normally wouldn't be bothered by war. After all, he's a giant cyclops who can lay waste to an entire battlefield just by blinking at it. That changes, however, due to a prophecy that he'll be slain by his own descendant, more specifically his grandson. To prevent this, he hides his daughter Ethniu in a tower. However, Balor stumbles upon a lost cow and takes it into his castle. This cow, however, is under the watch of the Danann Cian. Cian searches for the cow and finds himself in Ethniu's tower. Now, Ethniu is supposedly an earth goddess, Cian a sky god. And those of you who study pantheons, particularly Indo-European Aryan pantheons, know that opposites attract. So we all know what goes down here. So, of course, Ethniu and Cian sire a child named Lulamfada. Balor orders to be killed immediately by being thrown into the sea, but he's saved and raised by Manannán mac Lir. He grows up to be a god of merry Sues, and I say that because he's a master of skills and bests all the Danann at their own powers to earn their trust. Now, as I said, Lu is a god of skills, as well as arts, the harvest, good crops, crafts, and above all, the sun. Some people also think he's a storm and lightning god, but actually he can only invoke storms and lightning through the lightning spear Gaia's Sail, one of the 4 Danann treasures. This spear controls the elements, lightning, and has a mind of its own, which is prone to violent outbreaks, such as flying around the battlefield, killing all your enemies, and can only be tamed again by a bag of poppy seeds. Okay. Anyway, he joins the Tuatha De Danann, they go on adventures, he even becomes Nuada's right-hand man. Eventually, they meet the Fomorians in battle again, and all hell breaks loose. Nuada, unfortunately, is killed by Balor, but Lu steps up to face him. Lu takes out his sling, the mighty Cleoch Tabal, and hurls a stone into Balor's eye so hard it knocks it out the back of his head, causing all sorts of suffering on the Fomorian line. And the Dananns win the day with Lu as their new king. Excelsior. The Tuatha De Danann reign over Ireland for over a century before the Milesians arrive. These guys are basically normal human beings, and they best them in magical skills and combat, forcing the Danann to retreat to the other world, from where they proceed to mess with humans and or intervene in human affairs, supposedly to this day. There are dozens of myths in Celtic lore. The heroic exploits of the heroes Cuchulainn and Finn McCool, for example, and the mischievous antics of the leprechauns, and so on. There are many parallels to other myths, particularly those of the cultures that would migrate and form the Celtic peoples of Western Europe. If you've never read or heard any Celtic stories, I recommend looking up the Book of Invasions or the Ulster Cycles, especially if you are trying to learn more about your heritage. Our pasts hold keys to ourselves that it seems the majority, or at least those in power, don't understand. After all, we have extremist maniacs running around destroying monuments, burning books, and claiming certain things of our past never happened. Or, on the other side, they're giving our ancestors a bad reputation based on political misconceptions and bias. They are so arrogant and foolish, they don't even know that it's their actions that cause the worst parts of history to repeat themselves. I guess what I'm trying to say is, learn about history. even the alleged mythical parts. Learn where you come from, so you can have a clue as to where you may go. It doesn't matter where you come from or what culture you're a part of, because all cultures all over the world have some badass myths and histories. So go ahead, see what yours are.